Nancy Wheeler is one of Stranger Things' most interesting characters. She subverts societal expectations, her ambitions continue to grow, and she becomes more resilient each season. In the first few episodes, Stranger Things positions her as the quintessential 1980s high school girl, shouting at her brother's friends to get out of her room, talking to boys, and wanting to do well in tests. But her story dramatically shifts when her only close female friend, Barbara Holland, disappears one night at a party, and since then, Nancy makes a series of choices that push her away from the life she's expected to lead. Despite her individuality and immense growth, conversations about Nancy's fate in Stranger Things almost always get reduced to one question: will she end up with Steve Harrington or Jonathan Byers? That question fundamentally misunderstands who she has become, and she really shouldn't end up with either of them.
Why don't you go ahead and go home? I'll get a ride or something. Yes. Barb, I'm fine. This isn't you. I'm fine.
In Stranger Things Season 1, Nancy's a smart but naive teenager, excited about her first relationship with Steve, and seemingly headed for the typical high school sweetheart trope. When Steve's parents go out of town, he invites Nancy and Barb to a party at his house, alongside his douchebag friends Tommy and Carol. Barb is hesitant and can see Nancy as starting to behave in a way that is not her usual self, but tags along for moral support. After cutting her finger on a beer can, Barb urges Nancy to not go upstairs, as she may do something she later regrets. In Season 1, Chapter 2, The Weirdo on Maple Street, the Duffers intercut Nancy's first sexual encounter with Barb being taken by the Demogorgon, and suggest that Nancy's disregard for her friend and leaning into her desires ultimately leads to Barb's disappearance and death. This moral tension floods Nancy with guilt throughout the rest of the early seasons, and Steve's inability to recognise this or show any concern for Barb leaves Nancy feeling hollow, misunderstood, and used. This turns their relationship sour, and she finds solace in the more thoughtful Jonathan Byers, who shares the same guilt over the disappearance of his brother Will. Steve is Nancy's safe choice, and she should have ended up with him in a conventional story. Despite their lack of emotional connection, he is the high school stud with well-off parents and the blueprint for who a good girl should marry in the 1980s to start her nuclear family. But who wants to settle for normal, especially in Hawkins? We see how settling for convention has affected Nancy's parents. Nancy recognises that Karen married her safe bet Ted and is now extremely unhappy, spending most of her time reading romance novels in the bathtub, drinking wine, and very nearly hooked up with Billy Hargrove in Season 3. Steve's dream of a perfect suburban lifestyle hasn't changed, despite becoming kinder and more emotionally mature. His end goal is still his 6 little nuggets with Nancy as mum. If Nancy ended up with Steve, she would be stepping into her mother's story that she clearly doesn't want to replicate.
Steve. We like Steve.
Yes.
But we don't love Steve.
What? No, I do.
There it is, ladies and germs, the second lie of the evening.
After becoming distant from Steve in Season 1, Nancy joins forces with the reserved and misunderstood Jonathan Byers, who is seen as an outsider by most due to his parents' divorce and lack of money. Nancy gravitates towards him as the pair have an emotional connection, and they both see beyond the pre-described path of marriage, children, and picket fences. Their relationship, as Murray puts it, is built on shared trauma of trying to capture a Demogorgon and briefly being stuck in the Upside Down, which provides a strong sense of togetherness that no one else can understand. But is that really a basis for a long-term healthy relationship? When the supernatural needs defeating, Nancy and Jonathan are an unstoppable duo, and their relationship feels like an exciting rebellion, but it becomes strained when their lives go back to normal. At their shared summer internship at the Hawkins Post, Nancy is determined and driven to be a reporter, but her male colleagues reduce her to Nancy Drew, mock her ideas, and expect her to fetch lunch. Her persistence to uncover the truth in the face of sexism reveals her tenacity and strength, but Jonathan cannot see it. He is more worried about being fired because he believes his opportunities are sparse, coming from a poor background. Nancy is enraged and speaks to her mother about their fight and her firing in Season 3, Chapter 4, The Sauna Test, and surprisingly, Karen understands her frustrations, indirectly admits that she has felt the same way, and urges Nancy to walk her own path. From this moment, Nancy can see Jonathan isn't the partner she once imagined he might be. By Season 4, he has moved away, they've gone long distance, and he hardly speaks to her. We see that he's drifting aimlessly, smoking weed with his new friend Argyle, and is actively hiding his college plans from Nancy because he knows he cannot keep up with her ambition. It's key for Nancy to follow her mother's advice. The 1980s world is harsh for young women with career ambitions already, even if there weren't supernatural forces that need defeating. Nancy is headstrong and has clear goals, and deserves her chance at the life she dreams of away from Jonathan, who sadly has a small-town mentality. He could also fight to leave the societal stereotypes thrust upon him, but he doesn't seem to have the same desire. Jonathan sees Nancy as the answer to all of his problems, but their relationship is holding her back.
So, Jonathan, how was the pullout?
Sorry?
The sofa.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was good.
Throughout Stranger Things, Nancy is busy fighting supernatural battles, alongside working out who she is and exploring her relationships. She's turned into a gun nut facing Vecna firsthand, and gets possessed in Season 4, where she is forced to witness his apocalyptic plans. In Season 5, Volume 1, she makes it home just in time to get her horrifically injured parents to hospital after a Demogorgon attack. Despite new traumas piling up, Nancy Wheeler remains determined and is a true leader in Season 5, but Steve and Jonathan are just fighting amongst themselves, not looking at the bigger picture. As station manager of WSQK, Nancy is still pursuing the truth and devising plans for the older party members, just like how her brother Mike is doing for the younger ones. While she is using the radio station to broadcast secrets across Hawkins and devising crawl locations for Hopper in the basement underneath, Jonathan and Steve are trying to get her attention. Both their characters seem to be reduced to fighting for Nancy in Season 5, with the highly disappointing scene of them racing each other up the radio tower being the cherry on the top of a very juvenile storyline. For Jonathan and Steve, securing Nancy is the ultimate goal, but for Nancy, these are the only two eligible bachelors in town, and she's really outgrown their dynamic. While Steve is trying to show his machismo, Jonathan has taken advice from the slightly insane Murray and plans to propose with a diamond ring smuggled into the quarantined Hawkins in a cassette tape case. A proposal right after her parents have had a brush with death and her younger sister has been abducted by Vecna only underscores how mismatched they've become. Proposing is not the answer to securing Nancy from Steve, it's another way to trap her into suburbia, and she does not deserve that ending. Hopefully our heroes triumph in Season 5 Volume 2 and life can get back to normality. Nancy can pursue her college dreams and become a well-respected reporter. She can battle her way through sexist newsrooms if she's managed to defeat Vecna. Nancy deserves to see what is beyond Hawkins and have a life away from her two high school boyfriends. The more Stranger Things Season 5 progresses, the clearer it becomes that Nancy's final storyline is not about choosing between Steve or Jonathan. She needs to choose herself. Karen's speech about persevering when the world beats you down is true for Nancy in the 1980s, and still arguably true today. As viewers, we want to see Nancy triumph and get the life she deserves beyond Jonathan and Steve. She deserves a future outside of Hawkins, one where she can become the journalist, leader, and the force of nature she's been becoming since Season 1.